warm welcome everyone to this Lunch and Learn webinar series, jointly organized by Simtech and Intellistride Technologies. This series aims to share industry trends from experts and researchers done around the world in the various fields of technology and strategy. We hope to keep it brief while you enjoy lunch wherever you are. With the emergence of the pandemic, digital transformation has taken an accelerated path to impact every aspect of business. So, to start off our webinar and shed some light on these points and topics, we have two prominent speakers, Mr. Anurag Bhatnagar, CEO of Intellistride Technologies, and Mr. Herway, Principal Researcher in Simtech, an agency under A-Star. To start off with, Anurag, who comes with over 25 years of experience in the telco, RFID, IoT solutions and services space, including holding several senior positions in Catherine, Germany, and Nokia, will be sharing some of his experiences and also points relating to this webinar. Before I hand over to Anurag, please feel free to share any of your questions along the way during the seminar using the chat box. So without further delay, let me hand over to Mr. Anurag.
Thank you, Francis, and welcome to everybody for this joining this session today. So I represent Intellistride, which is an organization which focuses on solution design for both SIs and enterprise in the space of RFID and IoT. We are also exclusive partners of Catherine RFID hardware and software in Asia Pacific region. We are based in Singapore and are working in close cooperation with Simtech on using the inventory tracking system, for which Mr. Herway will speak a lot more than me, and with whom also we'll be working on some cutting edge initiatives in future in the RFID IoT space. So maybe Francis, you want to go to the next slide? So let me start with the basics first. We hear a lot about digital transformation, and it's a much used word in a lot of organizations and consultants and advisors. So in the most simplistic form, it is a change in one of the combinations of technology, data, process, and organizational changes that we do. For our discussion today, we will not focus on the organizational change as it is a topic in itself, a separate topic, but digital transformation encompasses a wide range of initiatives in our organization, right from conversion of manual data entry to electronic data entry in the early days, which was also nomenclatured as digital transformation. But now it is more about automated entry without human interface. And even simple projects to convert barcode reading of assets to RFID-based auto identification of assets is considered as a digital transformation project. Our discussion today will be focused on some key topics on digital transformation. What I will talk is based on experience, what we have seen while we do a lot more use cases that we have been conducting with our enterprise and SI customers. And I'll bring that experience to you in this short session. So I'll talk about 15 minutes and then I will leave the floor for some questions, which you can put it on the chat box. And then there are a couple of polling questions as well, which will come to your screen. So let's go to the next slide, Francis. So the key considerations when you're looking at an IoT transformation projects is, first of all, it needs to. Let's say you are a senior middle management executive in an organization, and either tasked with or have an idea of a digital transformation initiative, which would change the way you deliver products or services to your customers. So what would be the key areas that you consider before starting a transformation journey? Now, these are the few things that I have listed we have on the screen. But first of all, I think the most important part is to make sure that your plan is in line with our overall organizational strategy. Any initiative which are not in sync with overall organizational goals are very difficult to get through. Any initiative not in sync will require that many more buy-ins, and maybe eventually difficult for you to push through. So some transformations have larger implication, and it is right to think for larger benefits. However, implementing such programs need smaller steps. So take a smaller steps, but have a larger goal plan. Uh, we uh, we have seen our customers who have started small, but then over years they have expanded their scope both vertically. When I say vertically, in terms of value that they get out of the data that they collect, and in terms of horizontally, where they also then move into other parallel areas by getting the experience in the first small area. So start small, but also think big. It's important, and I will talk about it why when I come to the ROI part of it. Then you focus on data collection. I think the near accurate data collection is the foundation of all IoT projects. Any upstream value added activity has no value if data collected is inaccurate. This will, of course, lead to wrong decision making if your data is not correct. And finally, a good solution design forms the backbone of an effective implementation of business strategy. When we do a solution design, we also look at how it is aligning to the overall objectives of a particular transformation. So we will talk about more of it in a subsequent slide. And then finally, looking at the overall return on investments. So you need to look at the return because without that, without a good ROI, none of the management is ever going to approve your transformation case. So that's the key considerations that you need to start thinking. There are a lot more, but I mean, if you can handle some of these to start with, this would kind of set your base. And then, of course, there are other things on organization and how which technology you're using. All those things become then a secondary part of this. So that's one of the we look at to start with. Maybe next one, Francis. So next one is once we talked about the ROI, right? So first thing that this is one of the biggest areas that a lot of managers feel a little bit, let's say, hampered with. When it comes to understanding on a gut level, this will work or not work. Everybody has a subjective view of that, and this is a busy slide, but this is an important one. I mean, if you don't get your ROI right, a good project will not get approved. A bad project will get approved, which is a scenario that you don't want in any case. And your finance person, your CFO, your CEO, your CXO is looking at an ROI at the end of the day to see if they want to go ahead with that project, because there are multiple projects out there that they need to invest their money in. And if you have a good ROI, that's what we will need to see. So there are three, if you really simplify it, and these depend more on company to company or organization to organization, but there are, if you do very basic three areas at which I have highlighted. So first is, of course, the cost associated with existing process inefficiencies. Now, this one is by far the most difficult to calculate and judge. There are obvious costs, which you say, okay, for example, you say my assets that I need to track, and they, let's say 10% of them or 5% of them get lost. So the obvious cost is, okay, this is the cost of the asset, so that's my cost. But in reality, if you really see, the cost that you have is much, much more than just losing an asset. So you are, in the first steps, you are identifying all those areas. So in this case, for example, what is the cost of finding the asset? What's the cost of replacing that asset? What's the cost of auditing? You're doing a replacement, probably you need to fast track it because the customer is really worried or your production line is stopped. So you really need to fast track it, which is an additional cost when it comes to asset because you're doing an emergency purchase there. What is the productivity loss if in a production line, if your production line stops because your asset has not reached your production line in time? What's the productivity loss? And then the cost of lost or delayed customer business, which means the customer might have gone somewhere else. So all these are critical areas that you really need to look at before when you really start. And this is where getting this information is the most critical one. And some of these, and this list is by far not the the only one, because some of these costs could be also unique to you, which you can add right here. So this is something, the first one that you need to get right. Then the coming to the next one, which is ascertaining savings associated by putting an IoT system in place. You would say, the cost calculated in the first one should be equal to this one, but that's not the reality. The catch here is that whatever best technology you put in place, it can never guarantee you 100% improvement. So you will still need to consider some errors in the process. So for example, today the lost spare parts due to a manual process is, let's say, 5% of the overall spares. The transformation exercise will probably bring the rate of lost items down to 1%. Now, this 4% is the improvement cost. This is what you need to consider. And the differential between the first item and the second item is where your real value of a particular or a real value of the particular IoT transformation resides. So the second one is as important as the first one, though it is not. Once you have the other areas identified in the first one, the second one is much more easier to calculate. Finally, uh, the cost of putting a system in place. So that's probably it's the easiest. Probably you go to a vendor and say, "This is my business objective," and he will give you the cost of whatever is needed to do them. Now, a complete cost of system again is just not the hardware or just not the sensors, or it's also then includes the whole services. The cost of the sensors and tags, which is more of a variable cost, which you need to look at over a period of time. Then there is a hardware cost, which is a one-time cost. There's a software cost, which could be one time and a multiple time as well. As you want to increase your services, increase the areas that is again with the new use case, this might increase. The services and support. So services of putting or implementing the system in place is another area that you need to look at. And then finally, the support. The system has to be supportable over a period of time. You don't want to put a system which you cannot support over next 5 to 6 or whatever the period of your ROI calculation is. And these you need to assess quite closely. But generally, what we have seen, and if you look at it, the cost splits between the various components here, if you look at, and this is general industry trend, or what we have seen in most of the RFID IoT projects is the hardware tags are maybe 10% of the overall cost. Even then, because of the prices also going down, this can go up and down, and also depending on the use case. If you need tracking of assets in a high temperature zone, then of course this cost goes up a little bit. Then we talk about the hardware, which is close to 18 to 20% usually of the overall. This is a one time mostly. Then you have the software cost, which probably is the highest in the overall scenario, which close to 35%. But then in a new scenarios, it also includes the cloud cost, the storage cost. So this can go up as well, depending on how much of storage you want, how many years of storage you want, and what additional features do you want to build in your software system. So that's but by and large in the industry, it's around 35%. Finally, support is services is close to 25% of the overall cost. So you need to set the system up nicely. So with the right kind of coverage, right kind of RF design, right kind of other stuff. So that's around 25% of your overall cost. And finally, 10% is your support cost, which is again a recurring cost that you can do year on year. Now, the best way to calculate an ROI calculation, and at least in RFID IoT projects, is the NPV method. I will not go through the formula here. I think most of you are smart enough to do that. So, but generally the trend, the accepted thing is that you need to at least calculate the ROI for 3 years, and also look at some other use cases. Usually, when you start on a digital transformation, it's not only the one use case that you're looking at, but then it may be multiple use cases over a period of time. So ROI is generally calculated for 3 years, and then, if possible, add new cases that can come in, which are naturally required as part of the whole process. And it's probably the most relevant method of calculation today. Going to the next one. So finally, as I said, I'll speak about the solution design and what are the features of a good design. So while it has to be simple, it has to be complete, it has to track to the business objective, it minimizes disruption. Whenever you're putting a design in place, what you're doing is touching technology, touching data, touching the process. So which means that it is actually creating a disruption into your current system of the way of working today. Finally, it has to be maintainable. The more complex system that you have in place, the more maintenance it requires. A simple system is easy to implement, and RFID actually falls in that bracket of simple systems, and that's where you should look into it. Second, it has to be complete. When somebody is looking at a solution design and saying, okay, here's the hardware for you to do your system, it is not a complete solution. It is just providing you hardware, which really doesn't make any sense unless it's giving you the whole system of hardware, software, services. And then it's not about focusing on hardware, as I said, but software services. And a designer of a good solution is aware of all the aspects of these design. For example, a poor data collection can jeopardize all the upstream processes and do not bring any benefits on the defined business objectives. And for example, an RFID system, for a good RFID system or solution to be in place, the knowledge of RF is extremely critical to ensure the right coverage of the tag reads. Any overflows in a warehousing or a supply chain, you can result in spurious reads or overlaps. So restricting the footprint, essentially in such cases. And a lot of cases we have found, and there's a current use case we are working where the legacy RFID system was put in place and the system was not giving the accuracy needed to derive the benefits. So we went in and we assessed the system, and we have implemented some basic RF changes that are needed. It's sometimes very basic. You need to tilt the antenna somewhere. You need to restrict, keep some open space. You need to restrict it in a particular chamber, and that improve the accuracy of the reads. So those are the things that are absolutely critical to assess to start with. So it's not, as I said, it's a full solution that you need to design, and it has to be a complete visibility of the hardware, software, and services. So, and then of course the software component of the solution design is also extremely critical. Not only does the software provide the front end to the user, it also integrates with the back-end legacy systems like SAPs, etc. You don't want to put in a completely new system and throwing out your old system. So what you want to bring in is a system which can integrate with the back-end system that you have. So it would be good to spend a lot more, and actually I would say essential, not good, but to have a good solution design to start with, and then build it up slowly as we go along. So if I would like to summarize in the way that it is, you first define the business objectives for an efficient IoT transformation. Get a management buy-in with the right ROI calculation over 3 to 5 years time frame. Focus on data accuracy before anything else. And I cannot say that more clearly, is accurate data is the foundation. And finally, get a good solution designers to design end-to-end solution. That is the backbone to your transformation journey. So, so that's where I would like to stop for a moment. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. I will respond to them as we proceed on this discussion.
Contact us for a free demo on inventory tracking system.
This webinar is brought to you by Intellistride Technologies. Contact us on connect@intellistride.com.